Okay, so I have another question about how long should someone keep their receipts and invoices and other business records for tax purposes? Is there a
Okay.
limit?
There is a limit. So here's the thing. You will hear different answers to this question. You'll hear commonly two different numbers. You'll hear either 7 years or 3 years. Realistically, those are okay. What happens is there's a statute of limitations for, and this is just federally. There's a statute of limitations on tax issues, which is 10 years. So if you want to be thorough, you would keep everything for at least 10 years. And then after 10 years, you can start getting rid of stuff. So as tax preparers, we are required to keep records for 10 years because of this statute of limitations issue. Now, the the 7 year thing comes from IRS policy that they're not going to go back more than 7 years. So that's where that number came from. It's not based on anything really firm, but it's just like what the IRS typically does. It's a wishy-washy number. And then in practice, what happens is the IRS will typically have an audit cycle of about 3 years. Like right now, we're starting to file 2024 tax returns. If something is 2020 and earlier and it hasn't been brought up yet, you're probably past the window at which point they're going to look at it. They still could if they chose to, but it's just not typically what they do. So if you want to be bulletproof, 10 years. If you want to be mostly safe, 7 years. If you want to be a little bit more aggressive, then 3 or 4 years. So that's federally. Most states will follow that. California, however, has no statute of limitations at all on tax issues. So we had one woman, she comes in, this was like in 2014 or something. She comes in and she brings this letter. It's from and this is, we're in Florida. She brings in this letter. It's from the Franchise Tax Board of California. And they say you owe us $1,000 from 1978. And so I talked to her. I was like, "Did you live in California in 1978?" She did. And it didn't say what it was for. It just said, "You owe us money." So this was 30 or 40 years later, whatever it was. And California says, "Hey, pay it." So there's that to factor in. As far as I know, and I have not looked at every state, but as far as the ones I've run into, I think California is the only one that has that particular issue. So there's that. Incidentally, in that scenario, what we ended up writing a letter back to California saying, "For what are you claiming this based on?" And then we never heard back from them. I guess they dropped it. Who knows what it was? And it's a great example of how 70% of notices don't get responses, but the ones that do, they know they aren't going to roll over. But as far as how you keep those records, if you're paying online for something, then typically you get an email receipt. Those are real easy to keep, right? It's when you're in person that you have this receipt issue. If you get a piece of paper as a receipt, then if you want to be real good about it, take a picture of the piece of paper. Because in 3, 4, 7 years, whatever, that piece of paper is going to be illegible. It's either going to fade, the paper gets all crinkly, or whatever. So take a picture of that receipt, and then you have an archive of that will last. And then if you paid cash, then obviously that's all there is. But if there's a credit card expense that is going to match up with that particular receipt, then that's ideal. Now there is this thing called the Cohen rule, where they say that anything under $75 does not actually require a receipt. I will tell you that in practice, I have seen by people IRS agents, some of them will follow that and they won't care about the small stuff, and some of them are just giant pains in the ass and don't care if it's 3 cents. They want to see a receipt, otherwise they're going to disallow it. So you have to measure your paranoia level. Ideally, you don't get audited in the first place, but if you do, it really depends on what personality you get on the other side. Yeah, so there's that. But yeah, if you want to be fully maxed out safe in terms of receipts, keep everything for at least 10 years. Take pictures of anything that's on paper, and anything digital, obviously keep those files as well.